It started like a money problem, a rent increase, another message, another deadline. But the part that mattered wasn't the amount, it was the pattern behind it. She had lived in the same apartment for years, paid on time, no drama, and still the pressure arrived quietly. Not all at once, but just enough to make questions feel dangerous, enough to make silence feel safer than speaking. At first, the rent increases were small, easy to ignore. Then they got larger. Then they came more often, not always with an explanation, not always with anything official, just enough uncertainty to make every message feel loaded. Then the add-ons started. Repairs she was told to cover, fees that weren't explained, rules that seemed to change overnight, nothing that clearly screamed illegal. It was worse than that. It felt untouchable, because the message underneath it all was simple. Don't question it, don't complain, or you might lose your home. If you've ever lived with that kind of housing anxiety, you know what it does. You start measuring every word. You reread your messages before sending them. You avoid conflict, even when something feels wrong. Because the roof over your head isn't something you gamble with, and people don't talk enough about how exhausting that is, not just financially, emotionally, mentally. Fear doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it settles in quietly and stays. Here's what matters in this case. She didn't create the situation. She didn't invite it. She paid on time. She followed the rules as they were presented. The pressure didn't come from her behavior. It came from the environment around her. And the real issue wasn't one message or one demand. It was a method, a quiet one, designed to rely on vagueness and let fear do the work that clarity would normally do. For a long time, she believed something that felt true, that renters don't really have rights, that landlords always have the final word, that speaking up leads straight to eviction, that silence is safer than resistance. But one question refused to leave her alone. What if the fear isn't coming from what they can do, but from what I don't understand? And that question changed the balance. So she stopped guessing. She didn't suddenly trust the system. She didn't assume rules are fair. She just started reading, slowly, carefully, the agreement, the notices, the timelines, not looking for power, just looking for structure. And what she found wasn't magic. It was limits, boundaries, places where pressure ends and process begins. In many places, rent changes follow rules. Notice periods matter. Entry isn't unlimited. Eviction isn't instant. And when pressure relies heavily on urgency, it often means real leverage is smaller than it looks. Not everywhere, not every contract, not every situation, but as a pattern, it's familiar. Fear grows fastest where boundaries are invisible, and clarity begins to slow it down. That changed everything, because now it wasn't about being brave. It was about having options. Keep reacting emotionally, or respond with clarity. Keep guessing, or verify. Keep absorbing pressure, or find out where it ends. And for the first time, the situation felt readable. She didn't confront anyone right away. She didn't threaten legal action. She didn't try to win an argument. She did something quieter. She started documenting everything. Messages, requests, dates, screenshots, a simple timeline. Nothing dramatic, just consistent. Because when everything stays verbal, pressure stays slippery. And when pressure becomes a record, it has to choose, explain itself, or stop. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, and it didn't fix everything overnight. But something shifted. The next questionable demand arrived, and for the first time she didn't panic. She didn't argue. She didn't spiral. She replied calmly, "This doesn't appear to align with the written terms. I've been keeping records of requests and dates." That was all. No accusations, no emotion, just clarity. And that was enough. Because pressure only works when it goes unanswered, and authority weakens the moment it has to explain itself. When a paper trail exists, the dynamic changes, not because someone shouted, but because ambiguity stopped being free. The fear didn't vanish overnight, but it faded. The anxiety softened, the silence lifted, and something else took its place. Stability. Then something else happened. Other tenants started comparing notes, messages, timelines, patterns. They recognized the same tactics, and once records were compared, vague pressure stopped scaling, across apartments, across buildings, with the same method, not because the system changed, but because the method stopped working. This isn't about blaming every landlord, and it's not pretending every situation ends perfectly. It's something simpler. Confusion is where exploitation hides. Clarity changes the relationship. Information changes the balance. And the first move usually isn't a fight. It's making the situation legible. Terms, dates, messages, patterns. Because when the line becomes becomes visible, fear has less room to operate, and power rarely fades because someone gets louder. It fades when the story becomes documented.